Ruler School is brought to you by Happy Little Hug Factory and these amazing patrons. Extra special thank you to guest lecturer patrons Brody Harris and Lance Albertson. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video. Hey there everyone, DMO73 here, bringing you the deck profile for the Aimul and Friends list from Josh that he played earlier this week. He ended up taking second place at our states, so pretty cool list, and I definitely think that this is a very strong take on Aimul and kind of what Aimul has to do, knowing that she only has access to white, and then, you know, the splash of darkness because of the Magic Stones of Hope. So congrats to Josh on his finish, and as well, I really like this deck a lot for the way it kind of builds Aimul. So obviously, Imou on the front, Princess of Fleeting Hope, Judgments for double white, energizes white-black, and she can pay 0 to recover a Resonator during your opponent's turn once per turn. And then she flips over into Imou, this 3/3 flying imperishable that has Drain, and when she enters the field, she looks at the top 3 cards of her deck. You may pick one of those things that costs 3 or less and put it into the field. If it is an inverse, you can then immediately invert it if you wish. You don't have to, but it's all part of the same effect. The reason why this is super strong is because it gets you quick access to things like Mephistopheles, it gets you quick access to Ramp with Life-Stealing Altar, it can get you quick access to the protection of Ray the Black Owl. There's lots of different angles that you can take. But overall, she can get very, very large very, very quickly because she gains +2/+2 for each inverse entity you control, which can include the Magic Stones of Hope, Despair, once they've inverted. Going into the stone deck, it's just 4 Magic Stone of Hope and 6 light Magic Stones, so 10 white sources, and then it eventually splashes into having the 4 darkness sources, which is really all you need, because this deck primarily uses the white stuff, and then uses the darkness in the kind of end game to kind of control the board to the point where you just kind of win out, or force really suboptimal plays by your opponent. So going into the main deck, 4 Angel of Hope, Angel of Despair. This card is very strong. 1-drop, 2/3, doesn't seem like much, sure, but it has Flying and Drain, and then whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 on counter on this card. So with Aimul, this is actually very, very strong because you can swing in the air, ping them, gain 2 life, get it to being a 3/4, and then on their turn you can recover it with Aimul so they can't attack it. So they have to waste a removal spell on it, which is pretty huge. And then when it flips over, it keeps those +1/+1 counters and has a base stat of 4/5, still keeps flying, and if there's any kind of +1/+1 counter on it, you just get to destroy any Resonator on the board. It isn't mandatory, so keep that in mind, but you know, just for only having swung once and then suddenly you have this removal card that's probably been draining you life over the course of the game, this is a very, very solid 1-drop slot for Aimul. Moving on to the other kind of heavy hitter of the deck, which is Mephistopheles, 3-drop 8/8 Demon, Judgment inverts whenever you do Judgment, and it forces everything your opponent plays in terms of Jays or Resonators to come into field rested. This is also very, very huge, especially considering how you can the fact that like Aimul potentially can get very, very large, has Imperishable, and kind of trade into things while also having Drain. And then Mephistopheles himself inverts into this 10/10 flying, says J Resonators your opponent controls gain -2/-2, and Resonators your opponent controls don't trigger their enter abilities. So this is like a stat neg and a effect neg all on a 10/10 flyer. Very, very strong card, and kind of the I want to say like the main kill card of the deck outside of Aimul. Panda Carpenter was a tech choice. It's a 3-drop 8/8. When this enters the field, you could destroy an addition, and if you do, you get to grab an addition. So this is really helpful against like Time Spinning Witch. You can pop their idols or statues, or like their 2-drop statue or a Koga, and if you do, then you can go grab a Soul Life-Stealing Altar yourself, which is really helpful for when you're doing ramp. Plus 3-drop 8/8 body is pretty standard in terms of stat line. Ra the Golden Bird is kind of some of the potential answer to not having access to green for cancels, is you can flash this guy in for 2 white to go 2/8, and then change the target of an ability to him. So it's kind of like a redirect, and then whenever it's targeted, you draw a card. So you use this kind of guy as a hand trap in a sense to flash in a creature. He'll replace himself because the thing will be retargeted over to him. And then because you don't have this cancel, well, you know, you can kind of prevent whatever they were trying to do, is whether it be a kill card or whether it be an ability that was going to mess with you, you just redirect it to Ra instead. Ra takes the brunt of it, potentially survives, which is awesome, and then even if it doesn't, saved the thing that you wanted to save, and you drew a card in response. The other thing is, too, is Ra can permanently, for 2 white at instant speed, can just change any other thing to target him as well, which then lets you keep drawing cards. So the longer this stays on board, the more you're protected, and then, you kind of just keep getting answers and answers and answers. Ray the Black Owl, primarily used to be inverted into since you don't have access to darkness off the top, but flips over into 0, which is very, very powerful. Especially considering the circumstance of, say, you have 0 on the board and Ra, you pay the effect of Ra to redirect a thing that would be killing and popping up trigger over there with 0 to Ra, pops Ra's bubble, you still draw a card, and then, they have to spend 2 more cards to try to kill what they were originally trying to kill. So it's a nice little combo there. And then Second Advent of Hope Grimia, we do play some auras with the Mother's Love, so this guy can potentially only cost you 2 if based on where your life is, and then can have Flying Drain and Barrier at instant speed, and he hitting for 1200 damage. So it's a kind of a over-the-top finale in terms of a way to seal that last bit of damage or just suddenly gain a ton of life almost out of nowhere. Mother's Love is a great kind of end of turn, you either draw a card or prevent a bunch of damage. It's also an aura, it's just going to sit in the graveyard until you need it. And this is a format where a lot of decks have Floating Will at the end of the turn. So Mother's Love helping to kind of cycle the deck or do something like that is also very helpful. This also helps it so that Imou can block stuff without having to die, though you kind of like having your Imou die so that you can keep flipping over and over. For Arrival of the Hero, because you're going to be flipping Imou a lot, so this card is going to be free, and as this format has shown, Arrival of the Hero is a fantastic card all around, being able to prevent damage to things or kill anything that's rested. Really just has a lot of utility, and then is free as long as Aimul is flipped, which you can do over and over and over again, which makes this card insanely valuable. 3 Flourishing Hope into Burgeoning Despair. It's another way to keep protection up, but also turns into some wonderful removal. As you saw in the feature match, you kind of force your opponent and control which creatures they have on the board, and then kind of punish them when they try to reestablish by making them sack the creatures instead, or you set up optimal positions where Burgeoning Despair is always going to hit the 2 cards that you want them to remove. And, it's 3 at instant speed to kill 2 cards. Very, very strong. And then Karmic Retribution is primarily useful for kind of flipping your own Imou back over, because you can use it for the mode of destroying Imou, flipper back over at the end of your opponent's turn, and then on your turn just perform judgments again, all for 1 will, and it also draws you a card, so it cycles. So Karmic Retribution is an excellent card. It's also an excellent way to kind of respond to someone trying to kill Aimul, or get rid of her imperishable. One thing to note though is make sure to be careful not to trap yourself. I've had games where I've tried to go Karmic Retribution Imou, and someone responds by going Separation of Fates, removes all of her abilities, and then I kill my own thing, and then she's just dead forever. So just be very careful with Karmic Retribution. 4 Miscalculation to help deal with early game aggro stuff, since we don't have a ton of creatures, but we're mono white, so we can always cast this card and it'll kill anything. 4 Life-Stealing Altar. Soul Returning Altar can be useful for replenishing our hand, but really we want to use it to make it sure that when we're performing Judgment, we're not really missing a Stone Call, and then we can use it to kind of set up swinging damage through with sacrificing creatures to deal -4/-4. And then lastly, Floating Isle. So this is an interesting tech choice, I think. Speaks to the fact that this deck tries to do some lockout shenanigans. It makes it so each player can only play 1 card per turn. Ultimately, the Aimul deck doesn't really care about only playing 1 card per turn because it has a lot of activate abilities or triggers. So this is also another part of a very nasty combo that you can do, is if you have Floating Isle, 0 flipped over into Ray, or Ray flipped over into 0, and Ra. So you have all 3 of those on the field. Then essentially any kind of spell that your opponent is going to try to cast to target something is just going to be permanently negated, because you can just pay 2, redirect it to Ra, you'll draw a card, and then your opponent's used their 1 card for the turn. So it can kind of create this really nasty lockout situation where your opponent just can't do anything about it. Now, of course, it doesn't stop their own activate abilities or anything like that, but in terms of decks that rely primarily on casting cards, this can be very strong, especially considering when when you consider flashing it in, because it has quick cast. So it's one of the few editions that has it, which I also think pushes this card in this deck to be a much more advantageous card for it. But there you guys have it. Let me know what you guys think of the list, or what you think would play differently, or how you would play it differently. A huge thanks to Josh, as always, for piloting the list, and congrats again to him for his second place finish at Michigan States. And then until next time, guys, this is DMO73 signing off.